everybody. Today is Monday, August 18th, 2025. I'm going to continue the series on working with investors. All right, so for those that don't know, my name's Luther Wilson III. I'm a real estate practitioner and investor here in the Kansas City market. And over the last 14 plus years, I've been working in the real estate industry doing one thing or another. And a good percentage, I would say at least 95% of the clients that I've had during this time frame, during my career, has been investors. So today I'm going to take a deeper dive into some procedures and things that I consider when I'm working with a buyer who is an investor. That's something that has been coming up a lot more recently in my world, and I'm sure it's happening in other real estate practitioners' worlds as well. For me, over the last few weeks, I've had at least 3 or 4 individuals who have expressed interest in doing something in real estate. They wanted me to help them with something. A few of them were buyers, and so that's kind of what I want to get into. And I think this will definitely be helpful for the real estate agents, the real estate brokers, and even those deal finders or wholesalers out there as they are, finding opportunities, as they're connecting with people. A big thing is being able to vet your customer or client to make sure that they can and will have a very good chance of succeeding and executing and getting the deal done, because that's how we get paid, right? Is no free lunches out here. And in the real estate space, as a salesperson, for the most part, it's straight commission. Okay, so I want to take a deeper dive into what it's like working with a buyer, what to look for initially, basically. But before I do that, I want to go over the 5 categories for customers and potential clients, okay, that I, connect with, right? Throughout the years and over the last few years, I've made a conscious decision to kind of cut back on the number of things I was doing, the services that I provide. And, it's a different ballgame as the market has shifted. We're already in third quarter 2025, and the landscape has changed quite a bit. And so again, this will be helpful for the newer individuals, the seasoned professionals who are working with investors. Okay, so first, the 5 categories that I came up with. So when I get a lead, or when someone reaches out to me, or perhaps I reach out to them, they are either a buyer, a seller, okay, a borrower, okay, they could be someone that I'm going to refer out, so a referral. And then number 5 is a consulting client or potential consulting client. And in previous videos, I've talked about all of those things in one way or another. Some of them I definitely go deeper into, but I think now in today's market, today's day and age, it'll be helpful to dig a little bit deeper into what it's like to vet a buyer and go through that process, okay? Especially now, because part of the landscape being different, besides, the economic stuff, the social and geopolitical stuff, the regulations around real estate has evolved, okay? So over the last few years, there has been a crackdown for, AKA wholesalers or deal finders who are doing off-market deals. Is that really representation? Do wholesalers need to be licensed? And that could go down a whole rabbit hole, okay? And then for those professionals who are licensed, like myself, I'm a licensed real estate broker for the states of Kansas and Missouri. We have to be extra cautious in how we move and operate because of our licenses and because of the regulations. And so just about a year ago this month, and I know this is kind of a long intro, but this is important, because the tail end really doesn't need to be that long. But Just a year ago this month, the National Association of Realtors settled a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. It was over $400 million. And it had to deal with licensees, those real estate agents, whether they're a realtor or just a regular agent or a broker like myself, in how we can move and operate in representing buyers. So the gist of it, the main point that I want to make, and it ties in with what I'm going to talk about here in a few minutes, is before I can show a potential buyer product, before I can really attempt to serve them, I need to have some type of buyer agency agreement. It could be exclusive, meaning that it's just me representing them, or, which I don't mind doing, and some investors would prefer, it could be non-exclusive. So I can help them find opportunities or deals or product or projects, or someone else at the same time. They could find it on their own. They could find it off market through another, agent, right? They could find it through a wholesaler if we do a non-exclusive, okay? But that's not just a good thing to do now, it's legally required for us to do. And I think about it, and really it was a good idea all along, okay? So besides me being required, or a true real estate practitioner that's licensed being required to have some type of agency or buyer agency agreement before we go shopping, right? That was standard practice for those who knew what the heck they were doing years ago and up to this point. Now it's required. And so besides that, in that buyer agency agreement, okay, this is another key part. The buyers need to be ready to pay some kind of commission to the buyer agent. It's not up to the seller solely to pay that 1% or 3% or 7%, which again, it was always the case. But again, I don't want to get too sidetracked, but that's what the class action lawsuit was about. Sellers who would list their properties on the market through a brokerage with a licensee or realtor felt like it was just like it was 6%, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That was not the case. The case was and always has been negotiable. Okay, so now they can't put it on the MLS, any commission, whatever, for buyer agents, right? And so I think it's a fantastic thing. In fact, and I don't want to get too sidetracked, but it all ties in together. But I was charging buyers up front 2-3 years ago because, again, things have shifted. And for those that have been in the business for a while, you could kind of see the writing on the wall, like certain things weren't really clicking as well. And so I'm like, look, for those professionals, again, who want to serve their clients and they want to preserve their time and their energy and their resources, these are just good practices anyway, right? Because inventory's been low for a while, because there's been more quote unquote competition on the scene, I felt like I needed, in order to, again, preserve my time and my energy and my resources, I needed, if I really wanted to help a buyer out and I really wanted to vet them to see that they were serious, I was going to charge them up front. And lo and behold, every single person that I charged a fee up front, we got through the finish line. We executed and performed in some way or another. Okay, so going a little bit deeper into buyers, okay, there are 3 things that you need to look for or you need to have when you're going to work with a buyer, whether you're licensed or a wholesaler or whatever. It's just a good practice, okay? And the 3 things that I look for, right? Proof of funds so that they can indeed perform. Besides that, we need a good game plan or a strategy, okay? And then we need some type of agreement, okay? So for me and those licensees out there, it's gonna be a buyer agency agreement. And again, it could be non-exclusive or it could be exclusive, okay? So I've been doing real estate for a while. I grew up in the business. Some of y'all know my background and story. It wasn't always the case where I was such a stickler, okay? But again, things have changed. I guess, maturity level, my experience level is gone up. And so in order to save time and energy, we're not playing around. I'm not playing as I was before. Years ago, early in the game, I would essentially take on almost, not all in all cases, but virtually in almost every case where I had an opportunity to work with a buyer or a seller, or if someone presented an opportunity or they wanted to partner up, more often than not, I would take that opportunity because I was in my late 20s, early 30s as a young professional trying to gain experience, trying to figure it out. I took almost every opportunity that I could to partner with somebody, to work with a seller, to work with a buyer. And that, as painful as it was very beneficial because I learned a lot and I was able to get a lot of reps in and I was able to gain a lot of experience, okay? And then it lead down through a process, right? Now, I don't necessarily need all that experience and I'm trying, I am using more wisdom and discernment as a human being, as a real estate professional, and as an entrepreneur. So those are things that you're gonna wanna think about, okay? Because I don't know how many times I worked with someone who did not have proof of funds. They didn't have any money, come to find out, or maybe I did know, and I, again, wanted the experience. We did not have a very good game plan or strategy, and we did not have any formal written agreement together. And of the times that I did choose to go down that path, a very, very small percentage of those we were successful on, okay? It is what it is. And so now I can look back and think about those experiences. And when someone reaches out to me, like, someone reached out last week and, I could tell rather quickly now because of the number of times that things didn't go well in a real estate endeavor or partnership or transaction. Someone can send me a couple text messages or I can hop on a call with them and I can know rather quickly what they're looking to do and how I might be able to assist them and what lane I can put them through, whether they're a buyer, a seller, a borrower, okay, because we do private lending as well, or if I am going to refer them to one of my go-to property managers, my mortgage broker, I can refer them to a listing agent, okay, depending on the property, or I can refer them to someone who can help them get something done, right? And then number 5, if there could be a consulting client, because a few years ago, I put together a real estate investor concierge program. And again, refer back to some past videos where I talk about that and keep me in mind in the future on that because I'm gonna do some more talks on that in the future. But again, for the buyers, those who are wanting to work with someone on the ground in Kansas City or in another market, this could be helpful to you as well because it lets you know, like, hey, we have capital that we can deploy. If you don't have capital to deploy and you're going to try to figure that out later on, it can still work, but the odds of it happening are not going to be quite as strong. Okay, so you may bypass that as most people do, right? And I had someone reach out to me, another person reached out last week asking me about listings or product. And I said, not without proof of funds, a buyer agency agreement, and a good game plan, all right? And he said he does not, he texted me back. This was through text message. The gentleman texted me back and said, I do not do agreements, buyer agency agreements. And I said, okay, no biggie, good luck, goodbye, basically, right? So that he disqualified himself, okay? At this point in the game, again, for those serious practitioners who are looking to move product, they need to have some confirmation that they can perform and have the capital. If you bypass that, then good luck. Then from there, the agreement. If you don't do a buyer agency agreement and they tell you, okay, I skipped one. So the proof of funds, you may be able to skip that. The game plan, if they come correct, because sometimes I could tell years ago, and even today, I can tell if someone reaches out and they're serious. They're gonna say something along the lines, or they're gonna mention something along the lines of them being actively buying, that they have capital, and if they do have that capital, you can simply ask them, okay, if we do indeed find product, how quickly can you capitalize or close? A key thing that I learned from my father, and I, have remembered it, is if they're a legitimate buyer and they have the funds and it is actually cash, because there's a lot of talk about investors using cash when it's really not, even if it's hard money or money from a friend or family member that they are going to leverage and have secured somehow in first lien position or second lien position or whatever the case may be. I've talked about that on previous videos too. If it's actually cash, the correct answer to when you ask them how quickly can they close, it should be as soon as the title work is done. Okay, if they say that they're cash and they need 30 to 60 days, that's a red flag. Why do they need that long? Would be your next question, okay? If they are seriously cash, they need to say, hey, I've worked with so-and-so, I've been actively buying in Kansas City or another market or whatever, and I can close as soon as the title work is done. That's what you need to hear. That's a legitimate cash buyer. Anything else is fishy, red flags, okay? So I've worked with buyers who were cash, and I did not necessarily have a game plan or strategy with them lined up, because they knew what they were doing. I knew what I was doing. But when it came time to actually put the purchase agreement together, then at that point, I needed to do a buyer agency agreement to fulfill my fiduciary as a real estate agent, as a real estate broker. Now, because of the regulations, and I think it's just a good practice to have anyway, before we even get to that point, we need to have that buyer agency agreement lined up, okay? So there are exceptions, okay, as I mentioned before. Sometimes buyers, may not want to do it, but you just have to explain to them the importance of it and how the thing works. And if they choose not to oblige or they disqualify themselves, and so be it. You can find if you have good product, if you have, a good property, then there's going to be plenty of people that want the thing to rent, to finance, to buy, to live in, whatever the case may be, so you can move on. Okay, if they do have financing, then that's a little bit different, because, okay, cool. In some cases, the financing is going to require some type of inspection or some type of valuation or appraisal, okay? And then you got to go through the loan underwriting, and then you got to go through the different forms and documentation. So it could take 2 to 4 weeks, perhaps longer, if the buyer is using some type of financing, all right? So I'm gonna leave it at that for today. I'll probably continue this series working with investors, and then the different aspects, whether they are a buyer, okay, a seller, a borrower, someone that you can refer out, or someone that you can consult with, okay? So if you made it this far, appreciate you tuning in. If you like what you heard and you want to, learn more, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and definitely check out some of the previous videos, because I take a deeper dive into real estate, in particular, investing in real estate, working with investors, the 3 main topics that I talk about: capital, strategy, and operations. So tune in for more. All right, thanks. Take care. Bye.